The question in the Q&A from James.
Oh, excellent.
How much experience does one have to have in the functional paradigm to get started in a job? So Pete, this might be one for you actually, but my experience from the Haskell world is that there's still an oversupply of candidates. So people tend to become quite experienced on like open source things or just upskilling themselves. There's not a huge amount compared to some other communities. I feel like there's not a huge amount of junior level development positions available, but that might be different for let's say Scala or Clojure. What do you think, Pete?
I would agree. Sorry, Francis, go on first.
So it really depends. So personally, I had to happen to me to hire people, and actually my position is that more than functional programming, I expect people to know actually like the principles that I talked about. I think that if you don't necessarily need to know all the patterns in functional programming to actually do functional programming. If you follow those simple principles, think about local reasoning and some basically way like if you manage to have this state like this mental model to whenever you program like that's already a lot. That's probably more than a vast majority of developers, in my opinion. So even if you have 1, 2 years, 3 years of experience, and you know that, then for me, you're good to go. We can work together. You can learn. Basically we can learn. We can look at different patterns like monoids, monads, applicatives, and some other stuff that Ben actually mentioned. But I think that step is already a big one. So
I'd just like to add actually, sorry, before I think it's better always to build teams that are a mix of experiences if you can. It's just that the way it seems to work out in the way that the Haskell community is set up is that, there are few enough people looking for Haskellers and enough Haskellers that generally it seems to be a bit top heavy with senior level folks, I would say. Pete, would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, completely. It definitely is dependent on language. For some, it is easier. An example of that would be getting into something like Clojure has got such strong links with object-oriented Ruby that from what I've seen in my experience, it tends to be a bit easier to make that switch across. There's companies that have that mixed stack of Clojure and Ruby as well. So you can leverage working with object-oriented language across to working in Clojure. Scala also has that a little bit with Java, and there are people who use Java already in a very functional way, so they're already on that step across. As Ben mentioned, Haskell is tougher. I think that's a little bit because of the community. There is very few companies using Haskell commercially until recently. It is growing. There are little startups that have really blossomed. One of them was a company in London called Habito. They started a few years ago and now have a team that's one of the largest in the UK with about 40 Haskell engineers working full time. So it is
PureScript as well, right?
Say again?
And PureScript as well for Habito.
Yeah, PureScript, yes. On the more front end side of things. But yeah, so I think it is changing. The best advice I can give is if you do want to make that switch, make sure you've got some evidence of some functional programming available on a portfolio or available on some Haskell repos or whichever language you're choosing to go to on your GitHub. Just make that strong case so you can get that first interview and really show off your skills that you've learned in your spare time. Once you're in the door, past that is then up to you on the interview stage. But it's just getting that first bit of interest from a company is all about just having that as much evidence as possible that you are really interested in working in a functional language. And from there, yeah. And like I said, if you need any more advice on that, just hit me up. And I'll try my best to help you. Brilliant. Was there anything?
Yeah, just one comment is that I think that Haskell is actually a perfect language if you really want to learn functional programming, simply because it's like going to a country where they speak the language you wanna learn. You don't have to the choice to use another one. When you go to Scala, for example, you can still like work your way out coding in a Java-ish way. What I really suggest is yeah, learn Haskell definitely if you want to get serious about functional programming. But maybe like a first step is to do functional programming with the language you already know as much as possible. You may not be able to do everything that you can learn like that you have in functional programming, but you can do a lot with simple functions. So learn to code with functions, and then later on you can learn more about the patterns and maybe move to another language if you're really interested by that.
Yeah,